Hi, welcome to the Black TV Show podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Temeskin.
Bonjour, comment ça va? Ça va bien. Je m'appelle Miriam, and that's about all I know about French. Try to put some French into this as this is all about, the episode's all about Sondra going to France. So today we're going to be doing season 1, episode 10, Bonjour, Sondra. This episode aired on November 22, 1984. This is the first time we're meeting Sondra Huxtable. As I mentioned in the first episode, they mentioned that they only had 4 children because there was a statement where Claire asked Cliff, why do we have 4 children? Cliff says, because we didn't want 5. But they added someone afterwards because they wanted to show the complete version of raising a child once that child goes to college or university. So a little bit about the person that's playing Sondra. It's Sabrina LeBeauf. She auditioned for the role. They were not considering her to play the role because she was 26 years old at the time, and this character is 20 years old, or it's either 19 or 20 years old. And so she was considered too old to play a child because she's also only 10 years younger than Felicia Rashad, who plays Claire Huxtable. Whitney Houston auditioned for this role, but Sabrina had more theater experience and she's the one who won the role. It's crazy to think that could have been Whitney Houston playing that role. Like, I don't know if she would have been a big music artist if she had, because if she was part of the show, would she had as much time to do her music? I'm not sure. Like, this could have changed history, honestly, on her career if she actually had taken the role. And honestly speaking, I love Sondra, I love Sabrina. They both start with S names. Sabrina does such a great job playing Sondra, and I like that, when sometimes the characters are played by just people you might not have seen on anything else, or they're not big time. I like that because it just puts it for that character, because sometimes if the person is a big star, it's hard to separate the two. So we're in the kitchen, and Theo says to Cliff that he wants to carve the turkey. I don't know if this is like a thing. Like, I didn't realize that carving a turkey was a thing. Let me know. But he was saying that he's 14 years old now, and so it's time for him to carve the turkey. And Theo's asking him to help practice, and instead, Cliff gives him a chicken and not a turkey. And Theo's like, "I want an actual turkey." Cliff says, "Well, you're gonna have to practice on this chicken." And Theo gets this huge knife, and he's about to cut it, and all of a sudden, Cliff takes the chicken away. I noticed during this scene that the island, the two, like the stove and the part that Theo and Cliff are on, is now divided. I don't know if you guys remember, in the first couple episodes it was connected. And I believe in the last episode, How Ugly Is He, it was also separated. And then Cliff was teaching Theo how to carve a chicken. And then Claire comes in and is like, "Oh, you're planning to pass down the carving to Theo." And Cliff was like, "I'm not sure." And Cliff is waiting for Sondra to come and ask Claire, "Isn't she late? Like, isn't she supposed to be here?" And then and Claire was like, "Oh, she's probably just late a little bit." And they start talking about Sondra being the firstborn, the one that asked so many questions growing up. Like, they just talked about her, and then Claire goes away for a bit, and Sondra's at the door. She's asking to come in. Cliff keeps asking her questions, and finally he opens the door and he noticed that she brings 4 bags of dirty laundry. Sondra asked him, "How does she look?" And he says, "She looks like trash." Not the greatest things to say to your daughter. I wonder, I feel like this is like a theme for people to bring their dirty laundries. I'm not sure how dorm rooms were like back in the day. Like, did they not have a washing machine or a drying machine. I'm not sure. But I've noticed in a lot of other shows, people do bring their dirty laundry. Sondra says hi to all the sisters and says hi to Theo. Cliff makes a speech about how this moment moves him because every one of them can move Sondra's bags upstairs. And so they all go and grab her bag and they take it upstairs. And Rudy even takes like 2 bags that she can't even carry. We get to Denise's room and Rudy's wearing a Princeton shirt. She asks what it says because, of course, at that age, she cannot read. Sondra says, "Oh, it says Princeton." And she also gives a study guide to Theo, and Vanessa gets his Princeton hat. Denise asks Vanessa and Rudy to leave. Of course, at this point, Theo's gone already, and because Denise wants to talk to Sondra alone, and Vanessa was like, "Oh, it's about boys," and so then they leave, and Sondra tells Denise that she plans to go to Paris this summer. And Denise says, "Oh, the romance, because that's all you think about Paris, the romance." And Sandra was like, "No, that's not what I'm going there for. I'm going there to experience the culture, learn about the good writers like James Baldwin and Richard Wright." I'll be honest, I did not know who Richard Wright is. I know who James Baldwin is because if y'all know Yara Shahidi from the hit show Blackish and Grownish, who plays Zoe Johnson, she talks about James Baldwin a lot. She wears James Baldwin merch. Like that is her favorite author. So that is the reason why I know who he is. But Richard Wright, I'm not sure. But I looked up that they both end up spending their later life in Paris or in France, and of course passing away there. I guess they wanted to enjoy life. I'm not sure how back then the culture was like because, of course, when they were alive, there was issues with segregation, and so I don't know if in France they were nicer to Black people. I'm not sure. And so Sandra hasn't mentioned this whole situation, like the whole plan to go to Paris to her parents. And so she asks Denise, "Who do I ask first?" And Denise says, "Go to mom. She's more understanding. Ask her about her work." So Sandra goes downstairs to the kitchen, and Claire is doing something, and Sandra asks her, "How was work going?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm doing well. I might be partner soon," which we will find out about the whole partner situation at her law firm on the next episode. And so Claire was like, "What do you want?" Sandra asked, "What do you think about Paris?" Claire was like, "Oh, I would love." She was like, "I love it. I've always wanted to go." And all of a sudden, Claire was like, "Uh-huh, you want to go too." And so Claire says Sandra can go, but Cliff has to agree first. And so Claire was like, "Tomorrow we strike and we'll get him." So it's the next day, and Cliff gets Theo to cut a cabbage as a practice for, carving the turkey. Cliff talks about how he starts talking about a story of how he prayed for a son to carry out his name, and Theo was born, and he watched him do things many times and tell him not to tell people who he really is, so to not defame his family name. Cliff says you're supposed to respect the food, not like cut like crazy. And so they practice and they do these weird sounds while they're practicing on there. Claire comes in with Sondra and tells Cliff that Sondra has something to say to him. And Cliff is like, "You brought her in here to say something, so this must be something a little crazy, no?" And so Sondra is about to ask, and she's like, "Dad, can I?" And she stops. And then she was like, "How's work?" And I love that. I remember there was the Cosby show. I wouldn't call it a reunion, but it was like they talked about all the whole series. Bill Cosby would say, "Whenever you hear Dad, can I? Like, when you had kids, that was not what you were planning to be called. You thought you were going to be Dad, but then they end up adding can I. And so your name becomes Dad, can I? And I love that. And so in this episode, you really see that, like, she starts off saying Dad, can I, and then stops. So I love that. She asks him about Paris. Cliff mentions the people in France would expect you to speak French. She's like, I'm taking French next semester. And he's like, that is not good enough. When an American speaks French, the French person doesn't know what you're saying. I'm not sure if that's true. I know that, like, when a French speaking person from Quebec in Canada goes to France, the French is a bit different. The dialect is a bit different. So that makes sense. I'm not sure with everyone else if they speak French if it would be different. I remember I went to France about 4 years. Was it 4 years ago? No, 5 years ago. Sorry. I went to France and we were in the airport and I give them my passport and they see that I'm Canadian and they start speaking to me in French and I'm like, I don't speak French. And they're like, but you're Canadian. And I'm like, well, I don't live in the French part of the country. Like, Quebec is known to be the French part of the country. I don't live there, and I didn't go to a French school, so how would I know what you're saying? Cliff says that they go on a trip every summer to the Grand Canyon, and it's a Huxtable tradition. And you look at Theo's face, and he is just looking at you like, is he crazy? Clearly, they don't really like going to the Grand Canyon. I've always wanted to go there. I've never been there, but I would love to go there. So I don't know what's the deal with these kids not wanting to go to the Grand Canyon. Clearly, they might go there every year, so then that might be boring. I understand. I prefer to see different things every year, not the same, like, monument or the same place every single year. Sondra asked, can we call for a family forum? Never heard what this terminology is, but I guess this is what they made up in their own family. Cliff was like, no, that can't be possible because only a parent can call it. And Claire was like, well, I'm going to call a family forum. And so she calls it, grabs all the kids. Cliff created this family forum for dispute of family issues, and everyone can vote. Cliff tells Theo that he has to vote with him or else he ain't cutting that turkey. And Claire was like, that is not fair. And so Claire says she tells the story or the situation to the rest of the family, saying she has a great opportunity to go see one of the most famous cities of the world. And Cliff is like, that is a misleading statement. And so Denise was like, oh, it's a wonderful education opportunity, and I hope to follow in her footsteps. And Cliff was like, be honest, that isn't true. And so she was like, okay, well, to be honest, it's not a wonderful education opportunity, but I hope to follow into her footsteps one day. And Vanessa asks, does this mean we will go to the Grand Canyon? And Cliff was like, no, we are still going to the Grand Canyon. And Vanessa was like, well, can I hold a family forum to not go to the Grand Canyon? So she's just like digressing. So clearly there's bad memories that are connected to the Grand Canyon. That's why all the kids ain't going. And so Claire was like, we need your vote. And Vanessa's like, well, it would be a neat thing for her to go. And Rudy seconds that and says, can you bring me a Paris shirt? And Sondra is like, yeah, of course I will. And Cliff is like, that is bribery. I'm like, not really. Like, she would have still bought a Paris shirt, but like, to get a shirt is not that expensive. And so Claire asks for Theo's vote, and he doesn't want to vote. He's like, can I pass? Because if he tells what he really wants, he's not gonna carve the turkey. Vanessa is like, just be honest. And he's like, I want her to go. And he slightly moves away because he's scared that, he's just gonna get killed by Cliff. So Cliff was like, okay, well, I want to call a family caucus. And he starts talking about the bylaws and basically just says, I want a one-on-one with Sondra. He takes her into the kitchen and he's like, why Paris? And she's like, I want to go see the culture and stuff. And he's like, well, why don't you go to St. Louis? And she's like, no, I want to go Paris. He's like, what about Japan? And she was like, oh, really? You would send me to Japan? He's like, yeah, I will buy the plane ticket and organize it for you. And she was like, well, no, I want to go to Paris. And he's like, no 20-year-old single woman goes to Paris. She was like, well, I'm going there for the museum, the art, the gallery, the history. Cliff was like, no, you're going there for one thing, to go party. And she's like, well, I'm not only gonna go party. And Cliff was like, oh, so you are going to party. And I I love that. And so Cliff starts talking about a story about a movie that he watched and how it made him want to go to Rio. We all know Rio is in Brazil, and he was like, in the movie there was like the carnival, and I just wanted, and there was this woman. I really wanted to go to Rio just to meet this woman and be at the carnival, and he didn't care about the culture and history. He just cared to go party and be with that woman in the movie. He was just saying he really just doesn't want Sondra to go to Paris because it's just it people fall in love there, and he mentions like the national drink there is wine. You drink wine with everything, which is apparently true. He's like, what about Budapest? And I'm like, why Budapest? And he finally agrees with her and says, tell her, like she says, you're gonna tell your mom that I did a big fight to say no to going. She's like, yeah, for sure. And he's like, okay, you can go. And she runs out and goes into the living room. We later go into the dining room, and of course this is Thanksgiving, so they're all eating together, and they're waiting for Cliff. Cliff comes in with the turkey, and Theo asks if he could go at it, and Cliff is like, no, sit down. And he asks everyone to say something that they're thankful for. Denise says, I'm thankful for the house, and Cliff being nicer to her boyfriends. Vanessa is thankful for not playing her clarinet, which is connected to the last episode that we watched, or not last, connected to the episode 8 that we were watching with Play It Again, Vanessa. And Theo says he's thankful for all that. Theo says he's thankful for her not playing the clarinet. And then Rudy was like, she's thankful for her bear Bobo, her friend Mary, Mary giving back Bobo and sleeping over at Mary's house, and everyone claps, because they think she's done her her list of being thankful, and she's like, I'm not finished, and so she's like, I'm thankful for Sondra being home. And Cliff was like, oh, okay, thank you. And she was like, I'm not finished. And finally, Cliff was like, next year, let's move on. We got no time for this. We got to eat. And so Sondra is like thankful that she gets to go away this summer and thankful that she gets to come home. Which a lot of people, I feel like with 2020, a lot of people would be happy to hear that statement, because a lot of people did go back home during the whole quarantine time. It's a great thing that she said that. And then Theo was like, she was like, I'm next. He's like, I'm thankful that we're almost being done being thankful, and thankful that I get to carve this year's turkey. And Cliff was like, tells him, sit, you're not. And then Cliff was like, I'm thankful for the 6 family members that we have, and he names every single family member. And then he says that, Theo gets to carve the turkey, and Cliff and Theo do that weird sound like, this is how you cut the turkey. Like, it's like really weird, and it's just like, what? And that's the end of the episode. So the guest star, of course, for this episode was Sabrina LeBeauf. I believe it's season 2. I think I don't know if it's season 2 or season 3. Will become part of the main cast. But for season 1, of course, she's only, I think, in 4 episodes, and this is the first time we're seeing her. The lesson for this episode is travel is a great opportunity to learn about culture, history, and also having fun partying. And I can say this, I can attest to that. I love to travel. You do learn a lot. in terms of history, when you go to the museums, you learn all about the history about that country, because like if I'm at home reading it up, it's harder for me to retain it. But if I'm really there and get to see all the statues and everything like that, it's a great opportunity to learn. And of course, you party. When I was in Barcelona last year, I did party a lot. So it's a great opportunity. And so the hashtag for this episode is Bonjour, Sondra. And the question that I have for you guys is, have you ever wanted to travel somewhere, but it was hard to get permission to go to? So tweet me at Black TV Shows Pod using the hashtag Bonjour, Sondra. And I wanted to let you guys know that tomorrow I am dropping a bonus episode for Black History Month. It's Black History Month right now. And I wanted to do an episode that's all about Black history. It's not from the Cosby Show. It's from another Black sitcom. And I have mentioned about this Black sitcom already in one of the Black shows of the week. So you can narrow it down which show it is. But I am excited to talk about that episode and learn about all the historians, all the Black people that were first at doing things or created movements. So I'm excited for that episode. So the next actual episode with this, what we're doing, is episode 11, You're Not a Mother. See you all in the next episode.